Life over coffee. Conversations for transformation.
Someone asked me why I shared political messages on my personal X account. That is a fair question. But then he followed up by saying that politics stink. It was one of those, well, actually, it was not one of those stay in your lane questions. It wasn't communicated that way at all. It was more of a curious onlooker question. Hey, Rick, we know what you do. This is your thing. But now here you are over here making political comments on X. Why are you doing that? And so I thought that his questions was worth exploring. And every Christian who wants to make a difference in their world should evaluate their role in politics and culture. The most obvious response as to why I share political or cultural messages on my personal social media platforms is, well, the Bible doesn't forbid it, which is not a blanket edict. And I don't mean it that way, that I would suggest, well, if the Bible does not forbid it, then it's fair game. But in this case, the Bible does not forbid it. There are no scriptures that prohibit a believer from engaging in politics, culture, sports, economics, or any other discipline or vocation that is part of how we live in God's world. Each believer really has to determine at what level that they want to engage in their world. So I don't judge anyone for their engagement or lack of engagement, and he wasn't judging me at all. I'm certainly not saying that. He was, as I said, he was asking a curious question because he knows what my day job is, and so that just seemed, because people are more familiar with my day job than maybe the average person, because mine is more in public, and so because he was aware of that, he saw something that was different from what he normally sees. But engagement or non-engagement is not necessarily sinful, so we really do have to purpose in our hearts what is appropriate for us to do, or in my case, what is appropriate for me to do. The aromatic nature of politics should not be the overruling indicator in our decision-making process. That's a nicer way of saying politics stinks, which, by the way, I do agree with him. But there are many things that stink, and it's precisely because of this sad reality, the aromatic nature of politics in a fallen world, that we should bring the aroma to Christ to as many manners as we believe that God would want us to, and that we have time to do, and it doesn't infringe on our priorities like our marriages and our families. Actual or potential messiness should not be prohibitive regarding a person's engagement. Some people will say that the church stinks or church life stinks. By the way, that can be true depending on which day of the week it is. But they use it as an excuse not to be part of a local gathering, which I would say that is wrong in almost all cases. Others think similarly about the messiness of a person's life, using an individual's unique Adamic fallenness to refrain from the Great Commission or the many other one another passages in the New Testament. The world stinks, and so what would you expect? And so whether it's politics or culture or church life or an individual, we want to be careful. And again, I'm not judging this person at all, but we do want to be careful about refraining from doing something because of the fallen nature of it. I mean, if unpleasantness were the most vital thing about moving forward with political engagement, there would actually be no gospel whatsoever, because it is precisely because of a stinking world, messy lives, that we have a gospel. That's why Jesus came, because we stink. And so the better question for each Christian to respond to is, what is an effective way to be salt and light in our fallen world as we spread the fame of God near and far? And that is really the most important idea that we want to wrestle with as believers. Everyone has a sphere of influence, and there is no question, absolutely no question whatsoever, that God calls us to share the message of Christ to the world, whether that is our children, our cul-de-sac, our community, or our country. Some Christians believe their responsibility for sharing the message of Christ is for evangelistic purposes only. That is the only reason that I would go share Christ with anyone. A segment of that group has this tight definition of how to do that, like giving a Bible tract to a stranger, and that is the beginning and the end of their Great Commission endeavors. Now, there are other believers who believe that religion and politics should never mix, which is really improbable because we cannot segregate our ontology, our state of being, who we are at our core, from what we do, where we go, how we do it, where we do it. It would be like asking Christ to stop being Christ when he stepped into political spheres. That is absolutely impossible. And so every Christian should strive to be Christ-like, no matter where they are or what they are doing. Now, the degree and the extent of this is uniquely determined, and so I would not want to manipulate or press you to do something that you believe that God would not have you to do. But being a Christian in every sphere of our lives, that's non-negotiable, because we can't stop being who we are no matter where we are. So from a human responsibility perspective, part of the reason our country is the way it is today is that many Christians are passive when it comes to political and cultural engagement. It is impossible to separate yourself from politics because it is the air that we breathe. Economics is similar. A believer could say that we should separate religion from economics, but that worldview is just as improbable as separating oneself from politics. Politics is all around us. We submit to civil authorities. We hear political messages everywhere we go. We have opinions on political perspectives. Whether we share them or not, we have opinions. We're pro-life when it comes to the personhood of a human at conception. We pay taxes for virtually everything. We watch football players kneel during our national anthem. It doesn't matter where you go, politics will always be with you. The decision that each of us must make is whether we're going to insert our Christian worldview into the conversation according to the ability, the time, the calling, the influence that the Lord has given to us. Or are we going to censor ourselves? You engage in politics every day as politicians legislate for or against your Christian beliefs. You have an opinion, and you should share your perspective on how our country should live morally. You really should. To the degree and how you share that, I cannot say because everybody is different. Every situation is different. But if God can use you to slow down the cultural and political tsunami that has been overrunning us for decades, wouldn't it be wise to speak now? And so somewhere between building a theocracy where priests are running the government, which I don't believe should happen on earth, and political passivity over here, millions of Christians should be using God's wisdom to create a better world. The degree and kind, it's going to vary. But we cannot pretend we have no role as fellow image bearers. And so with that in mind, let me ask you a few questions for you to ponder, not imposing my ideas on you, but I do want to provoke you to think and make a decision. How could you use your gifts, your skills, your talents to make life easier for others from a political perspective? How could you? I'm doing this podcast here, which is not something that I would expect you to do. I mean, consider infants in the womb. Consider the elderly. Consider the freedom to exercise our religion. How can you use your gifts, your skills, your talents to make life easier for others from a political perspective? Number two, how much time do you want to allocate to political endeavors? That will differ from person to person. I mean, you can vote, but what else? What about teaching your children a Christocentric political worldview? I think that should happen. Number three, what is God calling you to do in the political space? Some Christians choose to be electricians while others choose political careers. Neither one of those has to be wrong. I'm not suggesting you have a political career. My friend I've known for many years now just ran for election this cycle. He actually won, and he's going to be in our state government. I have another friend who supports this ministry. He ran for mayor of a little neighboring town next door. He won, and he was the mayor for a season. Maybe that's something that you should pray about. But to one degree or another, you should exercise some influence in the political arena, because you cannot separate yourself from it. We live in a political world, but we all must choose to what degree we want to impact our neighbor. How much influence do you have regarding persuading others politically? I mean, if you're married and you're married with children, I would appeal to you to consider influencing them. What about your friends? Number 5, if you have an opportunity to make your world better, a better place to live out your Christ-like life, wouldn't it be wise to do what you can to accomplish that good outcome? Number 6, would it be okay for you to sit passively on the sidelines while politicians create laws that keep you on the sidelines, never able to share the gospel? And then number 7, is it right for you to keep silent if the government tells you that you cannot teach your children about Jesus? So I trust that these thoughts will inspire you. As my friend asked me, why are you putting things out on your personal social media platform? A great question provoked me to think and really wrestle through, why am I doing that? Well, I've shared those thoughts with you, and I trust that it will inspire you as you explore how God may use you to make a difference in the lives within your spheres. Maybe doing life over coffee with a friend and working through a few of these questions. I've asked you 7 questions. Perhaps that could be a good place to start. Now, if you want to, you can read what I've just shared with you. The title of it is Why Christians Should Engage in Politics. You do to one degree or another, but should you do more, less? It's something to talk about. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Thanks for joining us. Learn more and get access to other resources at lifeovercoffee.com.